Hello, buddy. My name is Eric, and today we're going to be looking at some sort of rumor on the internet, which is that LastPass, a password manager that until relatively recently, about a year ago, I personally used, has been hacked. Now, the implications of a password manager getting hacked are pretty obvious. If a password manager had somehow botched their security to the extent that it was possible for an attacker to compromise all of their users' passwords, you would have a tremendous problem where anybody's passwords could potentially be stolen and all their internet accounts could be hacked. Now, in order to prevent this, password managers such as LastPass, and we can look and see what they say their security practices are designed in such a way that that should not really be possible. Like LastPass here says they have implemented a single incident which was not related to the vault. It was something with the extension. So they're using cryptography in such a way, as explained here, that it should be, unless they have done something bafflingly stupid, impossible for people's master passwords to get breached. Now, there's a really easy way for master passwords, and I do have a theory about what's happened here, to get breached, and that would be either a malicious extension or a delayed phishing attack. Now, I remember a specific incident a few years ago involving a cryptocurrency exchange where people thought that it was the exchange that got hacked because a bunch of people's credentials were stolen and used to create an API key over a couple of months that ended up dramatically pumping some low market cap cryptocurrency. The result, of course, was that the attackers were on the other side of the trades and they made a ton of money. So I think that's a possible candidate for what's happened. Just like how video game anti-cheat providers will obfuscate their actions using this kind of system, it would make sense. It does seem like a couple people were hacked from the same IP address, Brazil, and they even list out the IP addresses here, which many people think are tied to some sketchy connections. Let's see if we can find any conclusive theories. Now, there's a lot of talk in this thread about PHPBB, which is an insecure, obsolete piece of forum software that apparently LastPass had somehow used with people's credentials, which is concerning because if they didn't know, and someone discusses this further down, that the PHPBB software is insecure, and how would LastPass, if their cryptography is implemented as they claim, not know your password? How would that work? Now, something else, just while doing research on LastPass, and this is something, just remember, anything I say in this is my opinion, this isn't, I don't know if this is related, but this is kind of interesting. LastPass was bought by LogMeIn in 2015. LogMeIn are going to spin off LastPass into a separate company very soon. Look, I don't know. I'm not trying to make a conspiracy out of that. That was just something I noticed when I was doing the research on this, and I was sort of confused. Here's a little discussion about someone who made a converter, and of course, a bunch of people are saying you should never use a random script off of GitHub to convert your passwords. That is probably good security advice, because you don't know. There's a bunch of discussion about the PHPBB, and here is an old hacker news thread about how they could potentially be implemented without the knowledge of the password, which is good to know, because that's otherwise very concerning. Yeah, they could just hack your server and socially engineer. So what would be interesting is if LastPass had shut down this forum a while ago. It would be interesting to know, given that most of these people seem to say their accounts were not actively being used. Is it possible that this was the source, and then older passwords but not newer ones? I did check my account, which has two-factor authentication still enabled on it, and I haven't seen any login attempts. So that's good news. What I was thinking, because I changed that password in late 2019, which is more recent than the forum that I also never used. So it is possible that this could have happened. Now, here is a media article that was inspired by the Hacker News thread, where these people say that LastPass insist there was no breach. And here's what LastPass has said in response. They investigated recent reports of blocked login attempts and determined the activity is related to fairly common bot-related activity in which a malicious or bad actor attempts to access user accounts, in this case LastPass, using email addresses and passwords obtained from third-party breaches related to other unaffiliated services. It's important to note that we do not have any indication that any accounts were successfully accessed or that LastPass service was otherwise compromised by an unauthorized party. We regularly monitor for this type of activity and will continue to take steps designed to ensure that LastPass, its users, and their data remain protected and secure. Well, that's good to know. So this journalist goes on to say that they think that LastPass did everything they should have done, which, yeah, if this is correct, that would be correct. So this kind of goes along with my theory as well of a potential breach by malware or some other means that led to some sort of hacking happening a while later. There's some further discussion on the support forum that's kind of interesting. Some people are saying there really isn't a concern with the forum. Some people are saying there is. Unfortunately, given this forum doesn't exist anymore, we can't go and look and see. But I generally see, I think the people saying that the master password forum isn't an issue are making sense, that there's not really a real concern with this because of hashing, unless LastPass had somehow royally botched their cryptography. And if they've done that, well then, yes, your passwords are gone. So here's how they say their cryptography works. They're using a zero-knowledge security model. It's encrypted with your device, and your password is basically a private. Now, given the amount of bounty on hacking a password manager, if there was a critical vulnerability, it would be found relatively quickly, because any hacker is going to be going after them. So I am generally inclined to believe that this is a fake incident, that there were a couple incidents, because I don't think, like, a few old LastPass account over a few weeks does not sound like a real issue. How many users? Let's just find out, because I don't know off the top of my head. User count. 25.6 million users. 4 reports. Now, how many users are there in Hacker News? Just so we can get an idea of some. How many people would use Hacker News? 1.6 million. 3 million a month? Okay. So, to me, 25.6 million, if a lot of them are in the US, if LastPass was actually hacked, you would be seeing huge amounts. I've got another idea to see if we're seeing a big trend. If LastPass had actually been compromised, we would be seeing a huge amount of reports of this happening. I'm going to... Okay, there's a spike, but that's from the Hacker News thread. Like, if there was an actual issue, the spike would be before people started talking about it. There have been, okay, here's another one from Apple Insider that are saying, it's just, okay, so they claimed that's interesting. That could be a real issue then, but I've not seen enough beyond the idea of some sort of credential stuffing, which I could totally believe. But let's go on Twitter. Let's see what... So Twitter is saying, yeah, this is all... So it's not a brute force attack. So they think Log4j fallout would be more interesting. Okay, let's see. So this is a real cybersecurity guy. Okay. Yeah. So I think it would be baffling if LastPass were trying to cover this up, because it would eventually come out. So I generally don't see any reason to believe that they've been hacked. I think there's probably a lot of master passwords floating around, either from the 2015 breach, or because most people said they were old accounts, or from other breaches. Remember, if you get a piece of malware, as I've shown in some of my videos, they can steal any password on your system. So that's going to be all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more content. I don't have a completely conclusive answer, but I'm going to call this a hoax unless we see much better evidence that there is some sort of compromise.